Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. First things first, guys, make sure you smash the like, subscribe if you're new around here, and as always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And another day, another Chelsea signing and a relative unknown player. The news that Renato Veiga is joining from FC Basel, 14 million euros. The news came last week on just out of the blue, no links to him at all, just bang, deal done. He's going to have his medical. Obviously sign a contract until 2032. Versatile player, can play left back, centre back, midfield. Ticks a number of areas that Chelsea are looking to fill. And I think he will be that left-footed defender that reports have suggested Chelsea were looking for. But myself, like many other fans, never really heard of him. Portugal under-20 international. So delighted to get the lowdown on him, what we can expect, strengths, weaknesses, all the good stuff. Delighted to be joined again by Antonio. Guys, if you've not checked out the video on Aaron Anselmino, make sure you go and check it out as well. Mate, thanks for coming back. Appreciate it greatly as always. Weren't expecting to link up again quite so soon, but with Chelsea, you never know what's around the corner. Renato Veiga, talk to me. What can you tell me about him? There's not an awful lot to go off. I've seen he's come through the Sporting Lisbon Academy, didn't get an opportunity in the first team there. And then he went to FC Basel in Switzerland last season, played 26 games, and now suddenly he finds himself at Chelsea. How's this happened?
Yeah, it's a beautiful morning if you're Renato Veiga, aren't you? But just firstly, I want to say thank you for inviting us back on. It's an absolute pleasure to be on. And Renato Veiga, took us by surprise. It was actually a beautiful moment because normally we hear about transfer news before it's even transfer news. So to get something out of the blue like this was fascinating, exciting. So Renato Veiga's had quite an up and down career so far. I can't lie. As you mentioned earlier, he came through the Sporting Academy. Didn't quite break through to the first team. But I put that down to them having good senior players already. When you think of João Palhinha was there, Manuel Ugarte, they were thriving in that midfield role at the time, so it was difficult for any youngster to break through at that time. So he came through the Sporting Academy. He actually left Sporting Academy to join Real Sporting Club and then went back to Sporting Academy later on in his career, and then he progressed through there. So he went on loan to Augsburg and it didn't really go according to plan. It was a one-year loan from January to December in 2023, but it was cut short in August after 6 months because it didn't really go to plan. But just to give you a bit of background on him, as you mentioned earlier, he's very versatile and he's like a jack of all trades. He played defensive midfielder, left centre-back, left back. But what was interesting, throughout his youth career, he never actually played left back. He played left centre-back for Portugal International, where he's still playing at the moment. But for Portugal youth setup, he played in a midfield three, normally alongside Matias Fernandes and Dario Osugo, who are two brilliant footballers as well. So they had a little bond in that midfield. So when he went to Augsburg, he got used in a position that he wasn't comfortable with, and that was at left back at the time. He was learning a new role. He was going into a new environment. So I think he did find it difficult. And because of his instincts of coming into midfield, when he was at Augsburg, personally, I think it didn't really go well because he was playing as a more traditional left back, as in like an old school left back, where he's left back in a four and he wasn't inverting or anything like that. And I think he really struggled there. And I think that's why it didn't go to a plan. But as you know, he moved on to ball, and it's been interesting at ball because he hasn't actually played left back at ball. So I can see what Chelsea are thinking when they sign him. But at ball, he played most of his games as a defensive midfielder, slotting in at left centre back at times. But in terms of profile, why Chelsea are looking at him is he's big, physical, he's strong, he can tackle. His skill set is incredibly diverse. He can intercept, he can tackle, he's good on the ball, he's good at passing, especially long distance passing. He's a physically imposing player. He's got pace, he's got stamina. So he's got everything you want when you're profiling the attributes of a footballer. But as always, youngsters do come with the weaknesses. So I can see what Chelsea are thinking when they did sign Renato Veiga in terms of profile-wise, because he's got that physicality to cope in the Premier League.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, like, according to the reports out there, Chelsea very much see him as someone playing that left centre-back, left-back, inverting into midfield kind of hybrid role. That's what they were looking for. There was obviously links to Calafiori. There was no bid from Chelsea, but there's certainly a player they were looking for. I mean, ironically, I think Basel signed Veiga as a replacement for Calafiori when he went to Bologna. So kind of, if you can't get Calafiori, just get his replacement instead. It looks like. Before we dive into obviously a little bit more about strengths, weaknesses, where you think Veiga's best, what are the similarities between himself and Calafiori? Because obviously, you know, he's obviously not as experienced. He's probably a year or so behind in his development. But things that I've been reading in The Athletic and stuff saying that Chelsea look at this as an excellent value for money proposition. They feel that, like, his attributes, obviously particularly his height, his physicality and whatnot, and the fact that he's got a more favourable injury record than Calafiori, they see those as positives. But yes, he's further down the line. But what would you say there's any comparisons between the two? Obviously, it's hard to say that, you know, Calafiori is not the better player because he's established international. He's played in Serie A. He's further ahead in his curve. But would you say there's any similarities between the pair, given they've kind of trodden a similar path to date?
Absolutely. I mean, you've touched on it yourself in terms of, like, look-wise, his body shape, it is similar. They're both big, physical. They like to impose themselves on defenders. So they have got that about them. They're both left-footed. But in terms of on the ball, they're quite similar as well, because Calafiori is good on the ball, so is Veiga. But they do come with the weaknesses where they tend to do a bit too much, or they struggle on the dribble, or they're not as aesthetically pleasing when they're dribbling. It's not as neat and tidy, but they're good with a passing range. And they're quite intelligent as well. I think in terms of profile-wise, you've seen Calafiori play as left centre-back in a back four and a back three. Renato Veiga can do the same. Calafiori's played as a defensive midfielder. Renato Veiga can do the same. Calafiori actually come through the youth ranks as a left-back. Veiga came through as a defensive midfielder, but in terms of their attributes and what they like to do on the pitch, it's very similar. They both like to carry the ball forwards, like to progress with the play, but the better when space is available to them rather than neat and tidy in tight areas. So it's very similar profiles. And if you're looking at, I don't know how much Arsenal are spending on Calafiori, but I know he's further down the line in his development, but look-wise and his natures on the pitch are really alike.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, look, I imagine they would be given, you know, he's kind of signed as a replacement, as I said. Under no illusions that, you know, Calafiori is certainly better now and is a lot further along the line of his development. Veiga, you know, could become better. We don't know. Obviously, you mentioned that he is a player that plays in multiple different positions. As I've said, Chelsea's plan, I think, is for him to play left centre-back / left-back inverting into midfield. Where do you see Veiga's best position right now? Where do you think he's at his best? You sort of said at Basel that he played predominantly in midfield in the Swiss League last season, but Chelsea aren't looking at him to play in midfield, given the options that we've got there.
That's true. I think for a player like Veiga, I think you can get away with him playing in midfield in a league like the Swiss League. But I don't think you can get away with that in the Premier League because of the intensity, because of the intelligence of other players and playing against better players. I think he might struggle in that midfield role because for me personally, I don't think he's got that 360 vision where as a midfielder in the Premier League, you need to know what's going on behind you without even looking. You need to understand that role. And I don't think he quite understands it. He's more of a loose cannon in that midfield. And I don't think the Premier League... I think if you're a loose cannon in the Premier League, you'll get found out. But I think you can get away with that in the Swiss League. So I personally see him at his best when he's playing either left centre-back or as an inverted left-back, whether that be coming into midfield because he's got that defensive capabilities or dropping into left centre-back and having like Reece James inverting into midfield or what have you, or maybe another centre-back stepping into midfield and he can cover in that left centre-back. So personally, for me, I think if you are looking to play him left back, I wouldn't have him as a traditional old school left back because I think he would struggle at that. But as a inverted left back, somebody that can tuck around, cover left centre back as well, I think he would excel there the most.
And what would you say kind of his best attributes are? You know, like what's he like with his range of passing? Is he good on his weaker foot as well? Awareness, temperament, those sort of things. What would you say are his best attributes?
Yeah, well, in the Swiss league, out of all midfielders, he finished first for long passes, progressive passes, passes into the final third, even though he's a defensive midfielder. And he finished second for forward passes. So I get that it's a Swiss league and he's not going to have that sort of time on the ball and things like that in the Premier League. But he's still got to produce the product. Do you get what I mean? He's still got to put those numbers out there. So he is a very forward-thinking player. He's not... I think he's better in open spaces on the ball than he is in closed spaces. He's not very neat and tidy. It's quite flustered and he's quite forceful on the ball. Sometimes he does make the wrong decisions. He tries to look for the long pass every time, and sometimes it's better just to keep the ball. But that's something that can be coached into him. So in terms of his attributes, he likes to progress with the ball. He likes to move forward. He's good on his weaker foot as well. And not often you get left backs that are comfortable on the right foot, but he's very comfortable on his right foot as well. And he doesn't hesitate to use it at all. So that's a positive. He's good on the dribble when he's allowed space and when he can find momentum on the dribble. Like I say, he hasn't got that explosivity off standstill, but when he builds momentum, it's very powerful, forceful, and he's quick over longer distances because of his longer strides, his longer limbs. In terms of his aggression, he's very, very aggressive. And I almost think too much it comes a weakness.
Does he pick up too many? Does he pick up a lot of bookings?
He does, yes. Yeah. Picks up a lot of bookings, gives away needless fouls. So that's something that Maresca's going to have to coach out of him. And sometimes it impacts him defensively when he's tackling as well, because he's very assertive. He's very proactive in his defensive duties. So sometimes he can get too tight and allow runners or somebody to roll him dead easily. And when you're a winger, if I put my mind in as a winger point of view for a second, you want somebody to be overly aggressive because that allows you to attack the front foot. When you're dribbling as a winger, you get told to attack your front foot because that allows you to go left and right. And your defender has a slower reaction. And that's what happens to Veiga at times. Sometimes he gets fixed to the spot and it allows wingers to dribble past him or forwards to dribble past him. So he just needs to learn to channel that aggression. He's got great aggression. I love his aggression, but sometimes it's just a bit too much and he just needs to learn just to compose himself a little more, especially when he's defending.
I obviously touched on maybe his aggression being a bit of a weakness, maybe his awareness potentially, particularly playing in midfield, runners off him being a potential weakness. I mean, what other areas of his game need improving? I think we've obviously got to provide some of a balance, and it's all very well having the good points, but that awareness, that temperament. What else would you say you look at and you think, if he's going to play in the Premier League, that needs to be sorted out?
Yeah, sometimes he dwells on the ball too much or makes the wrong decision. Like I say, sometimes it's easier just a 5-yard pass, keep the ball ticking, try and open up the opponents. Whereas sometimes you'll try and hit a 40-yard pass and it'll just go out of play, or he's not in tune with a runner, or just something like that. Just simple things, just making the right decision on the ball. And sometimes he dwells on it too much, trying to do too much on the dribble, whereas he loses it. He's good on the dribble because of his strengths, he's able to hold players off. But when he's got players around him and he needs to weave in and out of players, he sometimes struggles and he tries that too often. So he just needs to learn to either pass the ball or just not try and do too much on the ball. And another flaw, I would say, is consistency. Sometimes he can go in and out of games where he looks a world beater in the first 5 minutes and then 10 minutes later he looks a shadow of himself. And so he really needs to get his consistency up over a short period and long periods of time. because sometimes you'll go 5 games where he's unbelievable. Then the next 5, he just doesn't look the same player. Do you know what I mean? So he needs that consistency and just channel everything. So he's not doing too much and trying to impress too much. But I think with Maresca, from what I've seen from Leicester, he looks like a player that works well with players. And I think that's what Veiga needs, somebody like a coach, not a manager, somebody to coach him with the right temperament and things like that. So I can see what Maresca and Chelsea are looking at when they're profiling Veiga, but there is definitely flaws that do need improving.
I mean, it's a big step up. There's no doubt about it. We don't know for certain yet whether he's going to go straight into the first team or not. He'll be assessed in pre-season and a decision will be taken from there. Chelsea obviously believe that he's got the ability and the skill set to make that jump. But, I mean, would you be surprised if he featured in the first team next season, given how big that jump is, given he's only played 26 games in the Swiss league, didn't have a very good loan spell at Augsburg in the Bundesliga? Do you think this is obviously a massive jump? Do you think he's ready for that?
Ready to be first team starter? Personally, no.
Yeah.
But ready to come in. Look, one of Cucurella's downfalls is his height, probably his physicality. I know he's very tenacious and that's what I like about him, but his physicality, his height, marking on back posts, things like that. I think sometimes when you want to see a game out, somebody like Veiga is perfect to bring on, just to be a bit more competitive, be a bit more aggressive, win a lot of duels. Somebody like that. So I could see him potentially starting like group games in the UEFA Conference League or early stages of the cup games, and maybe coming on in 1 or 2 games in the Premier League, just to give him that experience, maybe work him into the team rather than just having him throwing him straight in the deep end, because I think that's what happened in Augsburg. It was kind of like he'd never made a senior appearance and all of a sudden he's playing out of position in a new club, in a new environment, and he struggled to cope with that. So I wouldn't like that to happen again, because I think he's a confidence player. He needs somebody to tell him what to do, when to do it, and that he's doing well. He's got that sort of attitude, but he's got a lot of belief, which is what I like about him. So if he was to be getting the odd minutes here and there, he'll certainly believe he's good enough, which is a positive.
No, absolutely. I mean, there certainly seems to be a lot of positives about him. Of course, as with any young player, you don't know how they're going to develop. They're going to need game time. What's Chelsea's plan for him? The same questions that get asked pretty much of every youngster that comes. Yeah. But I mean, if he progresses and develops how you think he should, or how the club envisage him to, I mean, how good a player do you think he could potentially become? Obviously, it's a difficult question because you never know what's going to happen. Could get injured tomorrow and your career's done or whatever. But like, how good do you feel he could become if Chelsea, develop him in the right way, give him the opportunities to show what he can do? Do you think there's a top player in there?
I think because of his attributes, the thing is, his weaknesses can be developed, and that's why I think he could become a top player, because if you're somebody like Cucurella, you can't improve his height. Do you know what I mean? But if you're somebody that needs to learn their role, needs to be more aware, maybe channel their aggression a bit more, they're areas that you can improve on. So I'd rather a youngster have those weaknesses rather than he's not quick or he's not aggressive enough or something like that where it's not in his nature. So I do think he's got potential to be a very, very good player. I'm not saying the best in the world, but he's got potential to hold his own in the Premier League. But like I say with any player, sometimes a club just is not the right fit. When you look at, I don't know, just off the top of my head, when he went to Augsburg, I don't think it was because of his ability. I just think that club just wasn't right for him because they didn't play that system, or they didn't use him in a position he was most comfortable in, and he didn't know his teammates. So learning a new role as well as getting to know your teammates is very difficult to do when you're making that step up into senior football. So I think for Chelsea, like I say, I don't think he's going to be a starter, but can he work his way into the team over time? Absolutely. Has he got the physicality, the aggression, the ball recoveries, the pace, the stamina to cope in the Premier League? Absolutely. But there is, like I say, a lot of coaching needed with him in terms of understanding his role and the game a bit more.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, for me, in an ideal situation, Cucurella would start the season as the first choice left back, and Chilwell probably gets moved on if there's a market for him, given I think it's clear that his skill set doesn't really suit what Maresca's looking to do. And then you would have Veiga as that backup option to Cucurella. But whether that's going to go to plan or not remains to be seen. He could be a disaster in pre-season, then they decide to loan him out, and then we have a bit of a rethink about things. You just don't know. But there's definitely things to be excited about. Sure, there's definitely positives there. But like with every young player, as you say, there are weaknesses that will need to be ironed out. But yeah, I certainly feel a lot more positive about the move. I didn't really know what to think about it, given I knew nothing about him. But mate, thanks so much for the insight. Fascinating as always. I'm sure the people will appreciate it greatly. If people want to know what you do, check your stuff out. Let them know where to go, mate.
Yeah, so me Twitter handle is just my name there. If you want to go and check out, I pretty much talk about all the youth football, upcoming Wonder Kids, and I've started a YouTube channel. I've just hit 1K, so I'm happy about
nice
that.
Nice one.
So I started that a couple of weeks ago. So if you don't mind going checking that out, just search for Antonio Mango, and don't forget to subscribe as well while you're there.
No, guys, make sure you do that. Channel will be tagged in the title. Click it, subscribe, go and show Antonio some love. Does some great work, so please make sure you do that, guys. And yeah, smash the like, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments. Catch you again in another one soon.